Right, following up on my last video where we added this AI, I need to add a totalizer. And to add a totalizer, what we're going to do is we're going to look for the totalizer rate block. And we're just going to add this block. We're going to take the output from the AI, and we're going to take it to the in. Now, we don't want this running whenever the device is bad quality. So what we'll do is we'll rearrange some things here to kind of help our layout. And we'll put a knot in here. So what we'll say is when this is not bad quality, we want it to run. I just want to get a little bit more room here. And as long as it's not bad quality, this totalizer will run. Now I'm going to take this FI signal and copy it. I'm going to make the output. I'm going to put an underscore and call this CD for current day. I'm going to tell it to create a variable. It automatically has it as global. I'm going to hit OK. Now, you'll notice when I hover over this FI here, I get a description. But when I hover over this FI with underscore CD, I get nothing. That's because I haven't configured it yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this FI that I just created. I'm going to go to where used, and I'm going to come to the top. And this is where that variable is created. It should be through the tree view in the task I'm working at under variables. And here I'm going to name this low pressure, if I can spell, low pressure fuel gas flow meter current daily total. It automatically selected the type as an L real because when you create a point in the logic, it takes the type necessary and it creates it when you put create point. And the format spec for this, I'm going to go back to the cheat sheet I had where I have a standard cubic feet a day in 0 to 1 million with 1 decimal. And that's what I want to use. And now I've configured that, and I want this to be available to the HMIs for the screens. So I'm going to put it on page 1 of the EGD. So now it can go through the OPC server and be used by graphics. Now when I hover over it, it's got a low pressure fuel gas flow meter current daily total. And I'm going to drag this to the rail. Now I have a totalizer. You'll notice I said current daily total. There's got to be a way that I can tell this to reset every day at a certain time. And to do that, I'll use another block called a time mon. Now the time mon allows you to use the current time and set up an alarm. So we'll double click on the time mon. I'm going to start by selecting daylight savings time as true. It's an immediate value. Daylight savings time is used in the US to shift the hour for winter and summer. And we're going to come down here and we're going to tell it at what hour we want the thing to reset. So we're going to give it an hour set point of 10. So when hour 10, minute 0, second 0 is true, we want this time mon block to trigger. For me, what I do on this is my flag output, you'll notice, isn't showing up in the graphic. If I close out and I go, okay, well, let me hover over it. No. Let me use my rail tool. No, it doesn't show up. So what I do here is I always kind of double click on it and I put random X in the flag. Now the pin shows up. Now what this flag output does is when this time equals the 10th hour, 0 minutes and 0 seconds, it'll send a 1 second pulse out. I'm going to use that pulse to reset my totalizer. So now I can take my rail tool and I can drag from this pin that now shows up over my totalizer, and as I mouse over my totalizer, the pins will show up and I've got a reset. I'm going to go back to my arrow tool, double click that flag pin, and just get rid of my double X. Now, I could also erase this, not use that little trick I did. Come over here and mouse over here, but see the pin doesn't show up. I could reverse drag it. So let's say I took this run pin. I reverse drag it over here. When I hover over this, you'll notice the flag pin's available, but I don't want it from the run pin. I'd want it from the totalizer pin. So in that case, there was no way I can make this connection between two hidden pins, which is why I use the double X flag trick. Now I can hover over and hit my reset. And now, select my arrow and remove my double X. Now the current day will be reset every day at 10 a.m. I want to make a previous day. So for the previous day, we have to get a little bit more creative. For the previous day, we'll use a move block. And we'll take the move block and we're going to take the output and wrap it around to the input. And then we're going to copy this CD signal just because I'm a little lazy. And before we do that, we want to make sure this move is the data type LReal. Because remember, this variable is an LReal coming out of a totalizer. We want to make this block compatible as an LReal. We also want to take this destination output pin and we want to make it, instead of say CD for current day, we'll say PD for prior day and create that variable. And since we made this move block an LReal, when it creates this variable, and we come here to the definition, it made it an LReal as well. If we hadn't changed the block type, because the default block type for the move block, when you drop this move block in, is Boolean. We changed that by selecting the move block, coming here to the detail view, looking at the block data type, and selecting LReal. Now we can come give this a description. And I'm just going to cheat a little from current day. And we're going to put previous day or prior day. And we're going to give it the same scale factor as the current day, 0 to 1 million. And I'm going to come back to my word used and come out here. Now, we're not quite done. Right now, it's just going to be moving the current day to the prior day. Well, what we want to do is we're going to interrupt this flag. I'm going to put an on-off delay. And I'm going to take this flag where it comes in and use my line tool. I'm going to put that in between the reset. And I'm going to tell it to go ahead and wait 320 milliseconds before you reset. And I'm going to come here with a pulse. Also from this flag point. And I am going to take this pulse and tie it to the enable pin. I'll explain that in just a moment. But first I'm going to say, hey, let's make this pulse just 80 milliseconds, which is a scan rate of the controller. What this enable pin does is when the enable pin is true, it writes the input to the output. But when the enable pin is false, nothing is writing to this output. So what I do is, first off, I take this pulse and I say, hey, when we hit the 10 a.m. on the day, wait 320 milliseconds and then reset it. The reason we wait 320 milliseconds is we're giving this other block the first 80 milliseconds time to move the current day to the prior day. That takes between 80 and 160 milliseconds to move that over. Then I give it a little bit of buffer, and then this resets the output. Now, the times I use here, the 320 and the 80, have to be within the 1 second this flag is going to pulse. So that's why I made them in milliseconds. And that way, when our current day resets, it doesn't accidentally also reset our prior day because we have an offset between the 80 and the 320. Technically, I could probably put this at 240 or 160 and it'd make it, but those few milliseconds don't really matter in the grand scheme of what this device does. So I made it where it's got 320 and 80. And in that way, I can have the current day move to the prior day just before it resets the current day. Now, as a general cleanup, I always like my sequence of execution to go in the order that makes the most sense. So my sequence execution is this one block here. So my AI is first, then it does the alarm block. I want it to do the not block next. So I select the not. I'm going to come to my detail view, go to my execution order. I'm going to give it a 3. And then that becomes a 4, and then a 5. I want this to be 6. I want this to be 7. And the last thing is the 8. The move will now move to 8. And now I have a totalizer. I can now build. Now luckily when I did a build, I get this error telling me, hey, you've made a mistake. This pin out needs to be non-volatile. And as little as I make these blocks, I forgot that. So we're going to come here to the variable. We're going to come to where used. So once we have the pin selected, we're going to come to the detail view. We're going to go down until we get to under the general tab, non-volatile. We want to make this true. Now, this is a non-volatile pin, and we're going to build again. And now we'll download. Now that we got 0 warnings, 0 errors, all we have is messages. We'll download. I'm going to bring this up to make sure we're not downloading to a bricked controller. Without a build 100, this would be red if it was bricked for the firmware version. And then we want to make sure it's downloading application code. We didn't change anything else, so we're just going to scroll through and make sure we didn't have anything else wanting to download. Now we're hit next. And we'll take a look. And it's not running because the point's still bad quality. And it's showing the time currently at the site. Now, just a moment ago, an error corrected me during my build, let me know I had not configured that pin properly. If I had right-clicked on the block and went to block help, here in the instructions, it'll tell me how this block works. It doesn't tell me anywhere here that it needs to be non-volatile. So the way I learned that it needs to be non-volatile is when I did the build and it told me. And that summarizes how to add a totalizer with a current day and a previous day, resetting on its own at a fixed time.